The following audio is via a Skype call.
Welcome to the transformative show, We Carry the Light, with host Dr. Susan Allison, the show that inspires you to find the light within and shine your light in the world. Who are you right now? And who do you want to be? What is it that makes you happy, helps you feel fulfilled, and living your purpose? Tune in and let Dr. Susan help you discover that you carry the unique light that only you can shine. Now, here is your host, Dr. Susan Allison.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to We Carry the Light. Thanks so much for joining us either live or listening to the archive show, which you've been doing with me for over a year now. You know, I'm sure you already know, I'm going to remind you, you can go to transformationtalkradio.com and listen to all my archive shows on my host page, Dr. Susan Allison. So, I ask you this every time, but how are you right now? So it's time to just take a moment to check in, to take a breath, and let it out, and just really check into your heart space, which is where I believe our intuition lives, and just see how you're doing today. See what bubbles up. See if there are feelings or any aches or sensations in your body, and really pay attention today to what your mind, body, and spirit are telling you. You know, it feels strange not to be asking you this question every Thursday, which I have been for over a year. But now my show has only been once a month, and I knew at the time when cutting back, I had to do it because of how busy I've been with my new book, all the traveling I've been doing, and that was the initial reason that I cut back to one show a month. But there have been other reasons I've not expressed to you, which I am going to on today's show. Mainly, I have wanted to change my pattern of being an overachiever, and I admit it, a workaholic. People have told me that for years, and I just go, nah, I just love my work. I love what I do. I really enjoy it so much. I'm being of service to the world, and I always said that to everybody who called me a workaholic. But I believe that they've been right, I admit it, all along. And I'm trying now to slow down and really enjoy my life. And I'm wondering if any of you can relate to that issue of working too much. So I'll tell you a funny story. It's like a good friend of mine told me. She called me after she went to her first Workaholics Anonymous meeting. And guess what? There was no one else there. And she called me and told me that, and we laughed hysterically, but it really wasn't completely funny because guess what? Everybody was working and they couldn't take the time to go to the meeting. So that just shows you that our whole culture encourages us to work 80-hour weeks, to not take any, breaks, to devote ourselves completely to our jobs. And I've had plenty of clients at very, very high-end companies I won't mention who have been worked to death. And before they died, they quit and changed jobs, went to smaller companies usually, etc. So I have needed a break, and I have been taking one by only doing a show once a month. However, I have made the decision very recently to take a leave and perhaps, not sure yet, no longer do radio. So today will be my final show of We Carry the Light. And I will be on Dr. Pat's show on the 28th of April, but for now, this is it for my show, We Carry the Light. So a few months ago, so I'm going to tell you the other reasons that I'm leaving. A few months ago, my dermatologist removed a skin cancer from my shoulder, which was a wake-up call in itself. And I got the message that I needed to slow down and not be pushing myself so hard. And then a few weeks after that, I was on a book tour in Southern California, and I had a blowout on the I-5 just north of the Grapevine, right before you get to LA. And it could have been a fatal accident. I was very lucky. that I had a blowout right where there was a place to pull over on the road, which I did. I had someone with me. My assistant was with me, and we were okay. Again, the message came, slow down, stop. You're pushing too hard. You really, really need to pay attention here. So that's two things that happened. And the messages were the same each time. So, I also was asked, what am I doing? Am I really enjoying my life fully? And I am in a new love relationship in my life also. And I would love to be able to focus on that and on travel and on loving my life. So something happened to me recently, which is number 3. Have you ever noticed that things come in threes? At least they have in my life. And it's kind of a cliche or a stereotype, but I do think it's been true many times. There was the skin cancer, the tire blowing out, and now I've been diagnosed with PTSD, which is post-traumatic stress disorder. And I will tell you how I knew that, how I found that out. So this latest situation, being diagnosed with PTSD, really has made me look at my life and reassess it and make some major changes. So while I was on a vacation with my new partner, I was driving because I have a Subaru and we were going to the snow and it's an all-wheel drive. So I'm driving. We drove 9 freeways and roads to get to the snow. And during that drive, I had a complete meltdown. I became so stressed. I overreacted to everything he said, everything that was happening. I was a nervous wreck by the time we finally got to the resort. And I nearly ruined our relationship over those couple of days. So I do think that a scary car accident when I was 16 and then this recent blowout on Highway 5 have, contributed to the PTSD. They were catalysts for it. But I also, during that vacation, I also found myself emotionally back to driving my late husband, Tom, to Stanford for daily radiation. I'd have to cross over 5 lanes of traffic to get to the Diamond Lane during rush hour. We always had to go at 8 in the morning for some reason for his radiation. And I was like white knuckling it, driving my car on Highway 280 towards Palo Alto and the VA hospital. And I was a nervous wreck and I was sweating and my heart was pounding, which are all signs of PTSD, but I didn't realize it at that time. Extreme stress that I was feeling during that drive. So I either drove him to Stanford daily, sometimes when he had radiation, or weekly to the VA hospital also for chemo treatments. And I did this for 6 years. Not every day, but it was enough to do it once a week. So on this vacation with my new sweetheart, I not only had these sensations in my body from the drive, from being in the car, but I had memories of all of these other things that I experienced with a husband with cancer for 6 years. All of the feelings came up of his surgeries, 7 surgeries, 3 chemos, 3 radiation treatments. Here was someone sitting next to me in the car as my former husband had for all those years. And I went right back into those years and right back into what my body felt during that time. So my behavior on this vacation was a complete wake-up call. And since then, I have been committed to lessening my stress by relaxing more and focusing on what brings me joy. Of course, doing this radio show has also brought me much joy. And I have some sadness today about leaving, but right now I need time to recover and to see what's next in my life. So I am going to focus today's show on PTSD. I really, for my final show, I feel like I've been trying to help all of you with all of these topics over a year that I've been doing, all the guests. But today I want to focus on PTSD to help you or someone you know who might be suffering with this disorder. If you want to call into the show with questions or to tell your own story, please call in anytime. The number is 800-930-28 That's 800-930-2819. You can also contact me personally at drsusanallison.com. And I respond to every email. So you can find my email address on my website, and you can also find an 800 number if you need to call me. I am a therapist in Central California. I do sessions with people all over the world, and I do sessions here in my office in Santa Cruz, California. So I know about PTSD, not just from what I just discussed with you in terms of my recent diagnosis, but my late husband, Tom, had PTSD. He had been an Army medic, and he served 2 tours in Vietnam. Why would he serve 2 tours? Because when he tried to come back to be the surfer boy he'd always been, he couldn't relate to anyone, and he just re-enlisted and went back for a second tour as a medic. Now, you can imagine everything he saw and experienced as an Army medic. And he came home with PTSD that wasn't diagnosed, though, for many years. At times, when I was living with him, we were together 19 years before he passed. At times he had nightmares, and if he was napping and I tried to wake him, he would jump out of his skin, which is called the startled reflex. He also had flashbacks from the war, and he could be startled by a car backfiring or fireworks or anything loud that reminded him of bombs going off, which he had experienced many, many times in Vietnam. He was there during the Tet Offensive, which was really, really a nightmare for him and the other soldiers. And there wasn't enough medicine. And he said bodies were up to the ceiling in the doorways. It was horrible. And he experienced all of that in the war, and then brought this trauma back with him when he came home. So, when I would startle him or something else did, his heart would race. He had trouble taking a deep breath, and his body was really, really reacting to all of this. He also hated hospitals. He felt stressed being there, and of course that was from being a medic. He reacted strongly to being really under any stress, and he needed to take time out, and he did by going surfing and being in nature. He talked to me, he talked to friends, he meditated, he played his guitar, and he did years of therapy with someone who was an expert in trauma, expert in PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. So it can be hard at times if you are with someone who has PTSD, if you're the partner or friend of someone who has post-traumatic stress. So I encourage you to do the same things, to get your feelings out, to talk to someone, particularly a good therapist, to be able to share how you're feeling, to you get out into nature and start doing things that reduce your stress from being with someone who has post-traumatic stress disorder. I, in fact, wrote a poem that was published when I was experiencing the PTSD that Tom had. I'd like to read it to you now. And some of you who are listening, if you're with someone who's been in Iraq, been in Iran, Iraq, Afghanistan, I saw plenty of these soldiers at the VA hospital just coming back from our more recent wars. So if you're with someone who has come back from one of our wars, you may be experiencing some feelings and some bodily symptoms yourself from this. So here's my poem, and it's called Married to a Vietnam Vet. I walk on tiptoe through our love, afraid that one move, one stray word, one eyelid flutter will set you off, unbalance you further, until you turn and walk away, shouting silence at me, disappearing over the cliff's edge with my heart in your hand. Yeah, so take a breath, because that's a pretty heavy poem, but it was how I felt at times. And it's very, very difficult at times to be with someone who has PTSD, but it's very, very difficult to have it. So I want to talk a little bit about what PTSD is. I want to talk about what causes it, what the symptoms are, so you can see if you're suffering from it or someone you love is. And I want to talk about what helps. So PTSD is not just a disorder that soldiers experience, but anyone who has experienced a trauma and not fully dealt with it at the time. And as I mentioned, I had a car accident at 16. I also almost drowned in a body surfing accident. All of these things, if we haven't dealt with them at the time, we haven't talked about them, we haven't tried to release them from our bodies, can trigger a post-traumatic stress experience when we're in a similar situation. And I'll talk about that a little bit more. So when a stressful situation occurs, especially one that's similar to the original stress, we can show symptoms like the ones that I described earlier. So I'm going to talk about the symptoms in a minute, but first I want to share some of the causes because, it's not, our stereotype is it's just soldiers returning from war, which is not true. Yes, experiencing or witnessing something horrific, such as what happens in a war zone or what happened in 9/11. I had my literary agent lived 2 blocks from what happened at 9/11 in the Twin Towers. She had PTSD. All these people who experienced 9/11, people dying, planes crashing, buildings exploding, and so on, probably had post-traumatic stress. Every time they heard a loud noise, their heart might have pounded and so on. But it doesn't have to be a war or a terrorist attack. Those are extremes. Most of us have not been in a terrorist attack. We've not been in a war zone, but we can still have PTSD. It could be an illness of your own or someone you love, watching someone suffer or pass away, as in my case. If you've been abused as a child or you saw someone else being abused, if you've been in a car accident, as I've been and many of you have been probably, if you've been injured or ill, either yourself or with, seeing someone else injured, if you were abandoned as a child, and many, many, many more situations. I have a friend with Parkinson's disease, for instance, and he says he's had PTSD from the moment he received the diagnosis. He has the stress in his body. So any trauma we've experienced or witnessed can cause PTSD. We can have it from losing our job or losing our home or nearly losing our job or nearly losing our home. And I know many of you listening have had to leave your home. You have lost it to foreclosure, or suddenly you lost your job and you have to move, or your partner has lost her job or his job, and you no longer have the finances to keep your house. That is so stressful. It's incredibly stressful, and it can trigger something like PTSD. In my case, I lived in the mountains in Central California, and we were evacuated in the middle of the night due to a fire that was sweeping through the mountains here, and it was 2 miles from our house. Here we are in the middle of the night. We get a phone call. We grab our animals. We put them in the car. We pack our bags. We put those in the car. Whatever we could grab, mostly photographs. And we had to leave that quickly. It was incredibly traumatic, not knowing if our house would burn down, which it didn't. The wind shifted at the last minute, and our house was spared. But it was the trauma of going through that stayed with me. My husband said, let's take a vacation to get out of this whole horrible fire situation. So we went to Mexico. And then we were in a hurricane in Mexico, and one of his friends emailed him and said, wherever you're going next, would you tell me so I don't go? And it was just unbelievable. We were in this horrible hurricane, at the tip of Baja, and they told us to lie on the floor, to close the drapes because the glass was going to blow out. And so my husband lay on the floor, and I wasn't there. And he said, "Where are you?" Well, I was packing. He said, "What are you doing?" I'm packing, because I was back in the fire, in the trauma, in our mountain home, and I definitely had PTSD. because I was feeling the same symptoms. I was panicked. My heart was racing, my head was racing, and I was packing. I was leaving. So, by the way, the hurricane didn't hit as much as they thought it was. We were fine. But just as an illustration to show you what can trigger a post-traumatic stress episode. So, anything, any trauma can trigger us, and then we're in a similar situation. Even when we see or hear or smell something, it can take us back. So let's talk a minute about any symptoms. Any symptoms of PTSD that you may have, that people you know may have. Let's take a look at them. Well, one of the things you've heard, and this is people who have been in war zones, you know, and my heart goes out to those of you who've just returned or you've returned in the last few years from Afghanistan and Iraq, Iran, anywhere that you've been where you have experienced war. My heart goes out to you. It's horrible. The effect on my late husband was horrific. And you know, might have flashbacks, which are common for soldiers. And these are the symptoms that we've heard about the most. Flashbacks, nightmares, and the startled reflex I mentioned earlier that soldiers exhibit if someone comes up on them suddenly, or especially if they've been sleeping. It's the startled reflex where they jerk out of sleep or jerk and overreact to being startled as if they're right back in the war. So other symptoms, as my poem expressed, there can be flashes of anger. I was married to an incredible person whose basic nature was very loving and very, very sweet and very generous. And some stressor would occur, and he could get angry really quickly. He went into silence. He would just get in the car and just get in his truck and just drive away. And that was very, very hurtful and disconcerting to me, as you can imagine. But it is a typical symptom of PTSD, which most of us have heard is fight or flight. So someone picks a fight with you over nothing. They, get in their truck and drive away. They have to escape. They're escaping to get away. And of course, anger, depression, all of these are symptoms. Any, anxiety and nervousness, a fear of certain things and situations, like my fear of driving freeways. So if you might have these symptoms, you might overreact to something that would not normally trigger someone. You might overreact to something someone says to you, and it's nothing that it usually would upset you or anyone, but you are triggered. Your heart might race. Your stomach might feel tight. You might feel powerless or vulnerable, sad for no reason you can determine, or really depressed. One thing that soldiers have done for centuries, and lots of us do if we have PTSD, is we turn to substances. We turn to addictions. You or someone you love or know might turn to drugs or alcohol, might turn to overwork, which has definitely been my addiction, overwork, might turn to food, shopping, gambling, anything that's a coping mechanism to be able to escape the feelings that are coming up, the body sensations and the feelings that are coming up. So those are just some of the possible symptoms of PTSD. And you might have others. You might know that you react in a way that just doesn't feel quite normal, that is very disturbing to you. And I think that the body symptoms I always say our bodies never lie. So there may be some symptoms in your body that you're noticing. And for me, it's been my heart racing. My heart just will start pounding, and it might even do it in the middle of the night. So a pounding heart, a stomach that feels twisted or in knots, aches and pains that aren't diagnosed. You can't figure out the cause of, but you have aches or pains. For me, it's my neck and shoulders. I carry a lot of tension there in my neck and in my shoulders. So anything that you're noticing in your body, any feelings that you're noticing that are coming up, and it's good to not stuff them down with a substance, not stuff them down with drugs and alcohol, not stuff them down with food, but to allow yourself to feel them, allow yourself to cry, allow yourself to get whatever it is out of your body. It's really, really very important. Also, talking to someone, as I mentioned, and I'll be talking about this later, but it's really important that you not feel that you're alone. Either you or someone that you care about is not alone. And, I'm encouraging you to call into the show if you'd like, because I'd be happy to talk to any of you, excuse me, any of you that are experiencing PTSD symptoms, or you are living with someone with PTSD, or you know someone. The call-in number is 800-930-2819. And we are going to take a break, and we'll be right back. And we're going to be talking about ways to help. We'll be right back.
Put a little woohoo in your life with Keys. Keys Clear Protein Waters have 22 grams of smile-making, attitude-adjusting protein in every bottle. Did I mention its tongue-tingling taste? Not just another guilty pleasure. With Keys, you'll enjoy every low-sugar sip and freedom from gluten, lactose, and GMOs. Who needs the fountain of youth when you can find Keys on Amazon or at Keys, Kees, please.com. Put a little woohoo in your attitude with Keys Protein Water.
Are you searching? Looking for a sign? A message you need to hear? From the great unknown? From the most mysterious place that is the most familiar to your soul in the depths of who you are. The universe put someone here to talk to, someone God gave a blessing to, that you may find insight with. TheAngelLady.net, 1-800-323-1790.
Shine On Radio. Find Your Shine with Kelly is the show that celebrates what makes you, you. Join co-hosts Kelly Wadler and Dr. Pat Basili as they break down how to brilliantly fuel and move your body and love what makes you shine. Kelly is a professional arts and wellness coach dedicated to helping brilliant women find their confidence, energy, self-love, and shine. Tune in to Shine On Radio with Kelly and find your shine on TransformationTalkRadio.com.
Hi, I'm Leslie Fontaine with Sheer Alchemy on Transformation Talk Radio, and here's my tip of the day. Let's talk about unlimited thinking. Let's talk about limitlessness. What would it look like and feel like? Is it only for special people? What if you aren't living a very abundant, powerful life right now? Is this opportunity closed off to you? Absolutely not. This is your chance, without lifting a finger, even telling anyone around you, or leaving the house. You can begin to step into all that you are and all that you were meant to be. Pay attention to the arguments that arise as you articulate the limitlessness of your opportunities, your finances, and the loving and supportive friends and family members around you. Draw them in. Let's shift those agreements from the lower level energies to those that allow you to step into all that you are. Visit me at lesliefontaine.com and listen to Sheer Alchemy on TransformationTalkRadio.com.
Discover the 8 things the elements of prosperity want you to know. Lynn Brown is hosting a life-transforming, soul-expanding evening on April 30th featuring guest speaker and radio host Dr. Pat Basili. Lynn was guided to make this a by-donation event for entrants, and all proceeds will be donated towards uplifting the homeless community. For more information and to get tickets, visit eventbrite.com. That's eventbrite.com and type Lynn Brown in the search.
Wow, Benny, what a great song. I've got goosebumps all over me. One of my late husband's favorite songs. About the war, about, he was drafted and tried to be a conscientious objector, and he was denied that status. And anyway, that song brought back memories. So, the show today, those of you who are just tuning in, is about PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, and I've recently been diagnosed and have been very transparent on the show about my experience with it, what I'm doing. I'll be telling you in a minute what's helped me. And just for those of you who are just beginning to listen, post-traumatic stress disorder is a recurrence of feelings and stressors from a previous event, something that's happened to us in the past, and suddenly we're in a similar place, situation, we hear something, see something, smell something, it triggers the same response, the same feelings we had during the original event. And so we are talking about PTSD, its causes, its symptoms, and what helps. So I do believe I have a caller from San Diego. I'd like to take that call now.
Yeah, unfortunately, our caller decided not to hang around, so our apologies.
All right.
Yeah.
So it was Karina from San Diego.
Yeah, but she's welcome to join us if she wants to call back in, too.
If you want to call back in, that would be great, and all the best to you. And it takes a lot of courage to call into a radio show, and it takes courage to deal with PTSD and to help those that are around us that have it. So I mentioned before the break that I was the spouse of someone with PTSD, and it was difficult at times. And now, having it myself, I have even more compassion for anybody who has suffered it since I've been going through it myself. And I have mentioned on the show the causes, not just war, not just something like 9/11, but something like losing your job, losing your home, something that happened to you in childhood that was extremely traumatic. My children talk about, one time their dad forgot to pick them up at school. And they waited and waited and waited at school and felt that nobody was ever going to pick them up. It was traumatic. And there were several other things that they've told me recently, in fact, as adults, that happened to them that you might think, it wasn't that big a deal. My son losing his blankie, it was a big deal. He was traumatized by it. And so little things that happen to us in childhood and big things that happen to us in childhood, being abused, being beaten, being sexually abused, being verbally abused, we can have PTSD from any of those events. Someone yells at us in a store, we can be right back as that child being yelled at. And so this is a show to bring this topic to the fore. And I actually have never heard a show on PTSD, and I'm so happy to be bringing it into the light today. So if you're unable to listen to the whole show, you can go to the archive show at transformationtalkradio.com and go to my host page. So I want to talk about what helps. Since We have talked about the causes a bit. We've talked about the symptoms a bit. That you have body symptoms, you have emotions that are coming up, and you may be turning to coping mechanisms, which someone recently told me about a book called Society as Addict, that our entire society pretty much is addicted to something, everyone, that we need coping mechanisms. And people with PTSD often turn to drugs and alcohol, turn to some escape, some way of coping the stress that's coming up. People are addicted to prescription drugs, and I believe that some people need to take prescription drugs for various disorders that have been diagnosed by a professional, and I have had clients that are addicted to their prescription drugs and have a heck of a time getting off. So we are going to talk about alternatives. We're going to talk about sort of the healthy things that you can do that will help with post-traumatic stress. So what has been found that helps people? I'll just tell you my own story first and then talk about what the experts say. So I did tell, and if you didn't hear it, you can re-listen to the show, but in the very beginning of the show, I talked about going on a vacation. It should have been a wonderful trip, going snowshoeing up in the Sierras in California. It should have been wonderful, and it wasn't, because the drive put me right back into an experience driving the freeways in San Francisco area. I became a mad woman. I became a crazy person when I was driving. I was overreacting to everything that my partner said. And I was just under so much stress just driving, and my heart was pounding and so on. So as soon as I got back, I almost ruined the relationship. We parted, angrily. And I said, oh my gosh, I have to do something. There is really something wrong here. And I immediately went to therapy. So this is to let you know that therapists need therapists. And I went into therapy with someone fantastic who specializes in clearing trauma. She's also a Reiki master. She does energy medicine. If you've heard of Reiki. I did release techniques that on me helped process and let go of several traumatic events in my life. I mentioned nearly dying in a bodyboarding accident in the ocean. And then I had a car accident that same year when I was 16, etc. And so she helped me release several traumas. Then I went home and I wrote down on separate little pieces of paper every trauma I could remember, everything that's ever happened to me that was traumatic. And I felt the feelings for each one. I did a lot of crying. And then I burned the papers in our wood stove. I burned them. I watched the smoke rise up. I released them. It was very, very, very helpful. I also did something which some people who are in 12-step work recommend, which I made what's called a God box. Just a box. You get a shoe box. You get any kind of box. You decorate it however will be inspiring for you. You put a slit in the top. You put slips of paper and a pen right next to it, and you write down everything you need to release, everything you can't control, everything that you're stressed about, you're waking up in the night and thinking about, but you can't do anything about it. You write it on that paper. You stick it in the box. You could call it a universe box. You could call it a love box. You could call it a universal force box. I don't care. You don't have to call it a God box. But it really has helped me. Write down whatever it is and put it in the box, which means I'm turning it over. I can't control it. I cannot do anything about it. And I let it go by putting it in the box. So that I did that right away as well. And I also have been spending more time in nature. I love being outdoors, walking my dog. I live by the beach. So I spend time in nature. I exercise every day. That really, really has helped being outdoors. I write in my journal. I am a professional writer, and so I do love writing. And so if you do, you could write in your journal any feelings that are coming up. And you can do anything that has helped you release stress in the past. You could go to yoga. If you've never gone to yoga, you could start. You could do deep breathing. And some people recommend you take 60 breaths. You take deep, deep breaths and release them, and you focus intently on your breath. And it helps release trauma. So, trying to think of anything else I've done. Of course, going to therapy, I highly recommend. And if you have people in your life, if you can't afford therapy, if you have friends or family members who listen, it's really important to find somebody that really just listens so you can empty. The purpose is to empty the trauma. The purpose is to release it, is to get it out of your body, your mind, your spirit. And so talking to someone who listens is really, really important. And in terms of choosing a therapist, I personally believe it helps me to be with someone who gets what I'm going through. If you have an eating disorder, for me, it would be having to go to someone who either has had one or understands it more deeply than just through doing research. So going to someone who's a trauma expert, it would help if they understand trauma. Maybe they've been through their own PTSD. And so the person I chose really got what I was talking about. She listened really carefully, and she did more than just chat with me. She did deeper work where I went inside, and she also did energy healing. And so I needed all of that to help me. And for me, it was a Reiki master, but there's also Eric Pearl's Reconnective Healing. You can find out online the Reconnection. And anyone who does that kind of healing work would be recommended as well. So we are going to take another break, and I'm going to come back and tell you what the experts say to do if you have post-traumatic stress or someone you love or someone you know has this disorder. We'll be right back.
Hi, I'm Tim Darter.
And I'm Steve Kramer.
Join us on Spirit Fire Radio. Discover how to add the mechanics of meditation to your day.
And watch yourself connect in a whole new way. Find the amazing moments in life's routines that often pass us by. Add to your awareness with Spirit Fire Radio.
Tune in each Wednesday at 9 a.m. for your weekly guide to practical mindfulness. And to learn more, visit www.spiritfireradio.com.
Awaken to your radiant, authentic self. For over 15 years, soul purpose advocate Nancy Monson has been focused on leading change in the lives of those looking to live their true purpose. She is devoted to supporting people in living a soul-directed life every day. Let Nancy help you overcome fear, worry, and doubt. Visit everydayspirituality.com to learn how Nancy can be your soul purpose advocate.
Are you ready for a game changer? Sarah Westall is bringing you Business Game Changers Radio. Sarah brings you leading experts, visionaries, and newsmakers who provide the best commentary on big issues and cutting-edge innovations. Sarah's 20 years as a business executive will help you think like an entrepreneur with expertise, energy, and attitude. Tune in to Business Game Changers Mondays at noon Pacific, 3 Eastern on TransformationTalkRadio.com.
Are you and your family looking for one manageable lifestyle change that will positively impact your health? Look no further. That change begins inside your drinking glass. Learn how to put a lid on junk drinking by sipping from a recipe collection of colorful, fresh, tasty, wholesome fruit and vegetable blends. Get your copy now of Sip the Garden. Fun, easy drinks for a healthier family by T. Carey Mitchell. Visit lifestyle120.com for information on how to order.
Tune in to The Jen Royster Show, intuitive guidance to inspire your life, each Thursday at 8 a.m. Pacific and 11 a.m. Eastern on TransformationTalkRadio.com. This amazing show is an inspirational hour that will take you on an epic metaphysical journey to discover the spiritual approach to life's greatest challenges. Dr. Jen is an internationally known intuitive counselor, spiritual teacher, and energy healer. Call in for intuitive readings and visit JenRoyster.com for more information.
Get ready to experience Truth Talk Radio with host Deb Acker. Tune in to Truth Talk Radio each Wednesday at 3 p.m. Pacific on TransformationTalkRadio.com to illuminate the truth in your daily life as you experience life, love, and abundance from a whole new perspective. This hit show will leave you feeling lighter and bring you into a place of infinite possibilities every day in every way. Visit TruthTalkRadioshow.com for upcoming transformative topics and guests.
Welcome back, everyone, to We Carry the Light. This is Dr. Susan Allison, and this is my last show, and I am feeling some sadness. I'm being very transparent today and just telling you how it is, that I need to take a break. I need to not do the show, at least for a while. I may be back. I may not. It's been wonderful, and I will say more about that later. But the show today is about PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, and not only have I been recently diagnosed with this disorder, but my late husband had it from being a Vietnam vet. And so I've experienced both sides. I have been the spouse of someone with PTSD, and now I have been diagnosed with it and have been seeking treatment. So we do have a caller. We have Frances from Seattle. Hi, Frances.
Hi, Dr. Susan. I do have some information and background, my own diagnosis with PTSD, but first, before any of that, I wanted to say I am so grateful for the shows that I have been able to listen to. You have just really propelled my spiritual growth in many ways, and I'm so grateful, especially for you being so transparent. I think that's been one of the most helpful things. And I'm so grateful to hear that you are taking care of yourself. That's fantastic.
Thank you. Well, perhaps I can model this for everyone listening, is that I need to start a different chapter in my life and move forward in a way that is still unfolding. And I just honor you so much for calling in, and thank you for your kind words.
Oh, absolutely. You know how it is. A lot of people think these things, but they don't. For whatever reason, they're not able to call in and express it. So I just wanted to make sure you knew that from my heart.
You. Thank you so much,
yeah.
Frances. So tell us a little bit about your story.
Well, my story is I'm actually in a pretty good place right now as far as managing PTSD, but I'm in my 50s now. I didn't honestly know that I had PTSD until I was in my 30s, and the reason I didn't know is because it started from chronic childhood issues, and so I thought it was just it was just me.
Yeah.
And my PTSD also, my siblings had memories of the violent household, but I did not. So it was when I started to talk to them and learn the stories, that's when life became really challenging for me, because you just think two things. One, there was an explanation for why whenever I would hear an ambulance or a siren, I would have the startled response or start to just cry. And why I couldn't be around people that were angry, but I didn't know why. But the other part was, well, then there's something wrong with me. I must be crazy. And it took a while to be able to learn, no, this is kind of part of PTSD, learn the symptoms and learn some different ways to manage it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's the biggest challenge for folks, is to have the compassion and to find someone who is understanding of it and can really support you in figuring out, well, then what can I do to manage this?
Yes, exactly. So I was just going to get into this, in fact, Frances. So tell listeners what's helped you, because I was just going to get into what people can do that will help.
Well, there were a number of things, but one, working with a really good counselor that knew about this, and could help direct me in self-care techniques and self-care modalities. To honor, to think of what are situations that are triggers, so you can figure out how to manage them ahead of time. Two of the things that have been extremely helpful for me for self-care has been exercise and meditation.
Yep.
If I do this on a regular basis at the start of my day, I've got lots of resources for the day. But when I don't, if there are triggers during the day, it's much, much more challenging.
Exactly. It's interesting you mentioned those two, because those are my two, the main ones that I have to get out, preferably in nature. You live in a beautiful part of the world. I do. I live in Central California. So after the show, I'm taking my dog down to the beach. And I've been a meditator for many, many years. You just have to do it though, right? It's like sometimes I don't meditate that day, and I do see a difference when I don't.
Yeah, I see a huge, huge difference in all of it. And I've also done, I'm doing something right now that I would highly recommend with someone that has PTSD is, there's a couple modalities, Dr. Susan, I've done, and they've all been effective. But the one that I'm doing right now is maybe because I'm just really ready for it, but it's doing EFT, it's doing tapping.
Yes, I was just going to mention that in a little bit. EFT, Emotional Freedom Technique.
Yes, and that's been absolutely fantastic, but I would not have been ready for that years ago, and I did something called neurofeedback, and that was fantastic because the neurofeedback sees when your brain starts to get in this fearful loop, or whatever the thought is that, oh, no, I can't handle it, whatever it is, and starts to interrupt it so it can start to relax. So that was helpful. And then, let's see, what was the other one I did? And I'm in such a good place now that I'm glad I did these. But it is Peter Levine. I can't believe I'm not thinking somatic experiencing.
Did you do EMDR?
I did a little bit of EMDR, and I found that to be helpful, but real similar to tapping. And for me, as an individual, the tapping has been faster. But EMDR, I know, is phenomenal for trauma.
Yes, it is. Yeah. And I was going to suggest that listeners do some research on EMDR and EFT and find a practitioner that does one of those, and then see which one resonates.
I could not agree with you more. I completely agree with that.
Yep, good. And you sound really good in your life, and I'm so happy that you're doing well. And you can be an inspiration for the rest of us, since I'm still in treatment. And I feel tons better than I did even weeks ago or a month ago. But it's a process, isn't it?
It is, and it's I remember many days of just saying, I'm so impatient. I just want it to be done. And you really do have to develop patience with it.
Absolutely right.
So,
and
it happens, and you end up being more kind and compassionate with yourself, and it's a little bit easier to be around others that have PTSD also at that point, I think.
Absolutely right. Absolutely right. And so one of the things, of course, that experts recommend and therapists recommend is being in a group or having people to talk to, friends, etc. So, and it's important not to be alone.
Yes, I would completely agree with that. That's really helpful.
Good. Frances, thank you so much for calling, and I hope I'll be back, but if not, thank you for listening.
Oh, absolutely, and good luck to you in all of your endeavors. I'm excited for you, being able to figure out more, having more time for yourself. That's fantastic.
And Good. If you ever want to be in touch, you can just go to my website.
Great. Thank you so much.
Bye-bye. So what a wonderful caller, Frances. I'm so appreciative that she called in. And be sure to reach out to somebody who listens well and who cares about you. Speaking of caring, I care about you, my listeners, and I will miss you all. Thank you so much for being part of my show over the past year and being willing to open your minds and hearts to transform and fulfill your own soul's purpose. So I am also moving into a new phase of my life, one that's less busy, less stressful, so I can be a human being instead of a human doing. How about that? I also want to thank Dr. Pat and her staff, Linda, Kim, Jessica, and anyone I've missed. And a huge thank you to Benny, who's engineered my shows week after week. I'll be on the Dr. Pat Show on April 28th at 10 a.m. if you'd like to tune in. And for now, as you go forward, not just today, but for the rest of your life, please always remember that you carry the light.
You've been listening to the transformative show, We Carry the Light, with host Dr. Susan Allison, the show that inspires you to find the light within and shine your light in the world. Who are you right now, and who do you want to be? What is it that makes you happy, helps you feel fulfilled, and living your purpose? Tune in every Thursday, 10 a.m. Pacific, and let Dr. Susan help you discover that you carry the unique light that only you can shine.
The preceding audio was via a Skype call.